Mikhail Hazal is probably Gran Turismo's greatest ever driver, and today I'm asking him how he got so fast. How does he practice? What driving techniques are fastest in GT7 today? And how can anybody get to A+? His answers absolutely blew my mind. Lock in for this one, because if you give this video just 20 minutes of your time, it will make you faster.
Hey everyone, my name is Mikhail Hazal. I'm a former world champion in Gran Turismo, when we used to play Gran Turismo sports back in the old days. Yeah. And here I am with the legendary Rory. Yeah.
And how many times have you won this event, or events generally?
Technically 3 times. The reason why I say technically 3, because I would like to count the TGR Cup.
Yeah.
But if we only look at the Nations Cup as well as the Manufacturers Cup, then only 2 times.
Insane. Right, so I've got 5 questions for you.
All right.
Right, and there's no right answers. We just want to hear from you about what's going on.
All right.
Right, so what are the 3 most common mistakes that you see from slower drivers on Gran Turismo?
Like, some of them really underestimate how much value it has to drive against a really fast driver and the same level. Because normally, if you're driving by yourself only, you can only judge your driving, pretty much. But you don't really know at which corner you're doing a mistake. Or for example, if you should have taken a different driving line, or maybe using a different gear, those kind of stuff. But if you're driving, I guess a faster driver who's driving right in front of you, you can also analyze his driving line on the same time. And there's also like the leaderboards from the time trial event, where you can also have a look the way how they are driving on the track. And I think analyzing those kind of things while also having lots of patience, because you're not able to convert that. Yeah. It's a really good speed right from the beginning, but you have to be patient, determined, but also have the motivation to keep doing so you reach your goal. So that's like one mistake. The other mistake is, I feel like some of them just end up losing their goal right from the beginning. Like, if they have the ambition to improve themselves, like, but I think everyone is also unique and also individual. Like, obviously, if I name those kind of mistakes, it could apply to one of the other drivers, but not for the other ones, because they're maybe lacking on some of the other areas in the end. So I think it's also really important to communicate with the community sometimes, so that we can also help each other out.
Yeah.
But also trying to find your own way in you. Yeah. It's like driving your line, the slogan of GT7.
Oh yeah, well, of course. Yeah, very good, very good.
It's fascinating to get like your input on that. It's amazing. It's not what I thought you were going to say, which is mega.
There you go.
When you're pushing really hard to try and overtake someone, like on the final lap, say for example, when you were trying to overtake Igor Fraga on the final lap at Spa a good few years ago. Sorry to bring that up.
Of course.
How's your mentality when you're trying to not overdrive, but also be as quick as you can at the same time?
I think it's really important not to underestimate the tire wear as well as the fuel consumption you have in the race, because normally in a time trial session you can be as aggressive as you can, because there's no tire wear, there's not really tire temperature as well. But during the races you really have to take those kind of factors into account, because if you drive the same way how you drive in a time trial session, you're just going to end up overcooking your tires and therefore losing all the grip till the end of your stint, or maybe even till the end of the race, because it might be a sprint race as well. But if you want to overtake the driver in front of you, I think it also depends on at what stage we are talking about, because if it's at the beginning of the race or if it's at the end of the race. At the beginning of the race, I personally prefer not to fight a lot in order not to lose a lot of time towards the other drivers, because in the end I would like to try and battle for the victory towards the end of the race, if possible, so that I can at least be sure that I will be finishing the race at that position at least.
So would it be fair to say you think of the bigger picture rather than
all the time,
jumping for it straight away every time earlier in the race?
Unless what I also do, for example, doing some daily races, because I always like to try and analyze the driver in front of me. If I see that the driver in front of me has good pace, then I try to follow him first. But if I see that the driver in front of me is struggling a little bit, then I try to overtake him as quickly as I can. Obviously in a clean way, because we would like to promote
I've been
sportsmanship
there.
here.
I'm smiling because I've been there. I've watched you go past. I've watched you. But then what if you haven't got that time? What if it is the final lap, like we said, when you're at Spa?
Yeah.
And this is it, right? The championship on the line. Is it you do everything you can, or?
Obviously I try to do everything I can, but within my limits, because if we are in the final lap, obviously your tires are not really in the best condition anymore. So you also have to take that into account. But if I see that the driver in front of me is maybe around half a second in front of me, then I really try not to do any single mistake before that, so that I can maybe utilize the slipstream to get even closer to the driver in front of me, and thus possibly ending up overtaking the driver in front of me in the final lap. Obviously, it also depends on the track. If you are even able to pass the driver in front of you, because there are certain tracks in the game where you can maybe overtake the driver in front of you in sector 1 or in sector 2 only, well, but not really in sector 3.
Yeah.
So, and then we have also seen a few other drivers making a huge dive, maybe dive bomb in order to gain the position. But I'm still like a driver who prefers driving cleanly than being desperate. Because if you are able to achieve your result in a really clean way, I think this is something you could also be proud of it. Because then you can also show it to, not really show it, but like, you can mention that to the other guys by saying, hey, look, I managed to win this event by being cleanly, you know?
And would it be fair to say you'd rather come second cleanly than first? Or does it all go out the window for the win?
I think...
Is it more to think about?
No, I think I would rather prefer finishing second cleanly.
Yeah.
Because obviously, if you are the world champion, the majority of the people are only going to talk about the world champion only.
Yeah.
But if you manage to win the world, the championship in a dirty way or in a less clean, cleanly way, then I think some of the other people are going to start disliking you for that. So maybe they're going to be like, yeah, he only managed to win the world championship by being dirty.
Yeah.
And personally, when we had the incident back in 2019, I also tried not to put the entire blame onto Igor, but on the very same time, I also tried to reflect onto myself instead. Because the huge weakness I had back then was like, I was just too lazy to practice the strategies for the races. So I was mainly focusing on the qualifying. The main reason for that was there was no custom slipstream back then. So we were using the realistic slipstream. And with the Red Bull, if you have the realistic slipstream, it's almost impossible to pass the driver in front of you. So that's why I was mainly focusing on my qualifying pace, so that if I started from pole position, then I knew I was going to finish the race inside the top 3 easily. But that race back then really exposed my weakness, and then I was also kind of telling to myself, okay, you have to make sure to practice the strategy as well. And not only that, I also tried to tell myself that I should even drive faster, so that I would never be in those kind of situations once again, so that I could just drive in front of everyone, in a much calmer way.
Wow, fascinating. That's amazing. Right.
Before the next question with Mikhail, can I ask that if this is helping you, could you help me by hitting that subscribe button? It helps me build the channel and will massively help me to get more insane access to events like this one in the future.
What's your approach? So I know you've just touched on it really, but what's your approach? And I think I know what you can say. What's your approach on the first lap of a race?
As for the first lap of the race, once again, it also depends on what kind of car and at which track you're driving at.
But generally, are you going to be super aggressive, or are you going to, and I think you've already said this, you're going to wait a little bit. But if you are going to wait, just remind us why you do that.
I think maybe it's also important to take that into consideration about your starting position. Because if you're starting from the back of the grid, then I would always be careful and also trying to see what the drivers in front of me are doing into the first corner. But if I'm starting from the front of the field, then it also depends on how the driver right next to me was also starting the race. Because maybe I could also use that opportunity to pass the driver for free, pretty much. So it really depends on the situation, but overall I try to be careful to kind of not really reflect. It's just to observe the entire situation, to be like, okay, this is how everyone was approaching turn one, and from there on I can also try to see how everybody will be taking the next few corners, and from there on it's just a nice flow.
Yeah, you can react from once you know how the land lies, as it were.
Exactly.
Oh, cool. What's the advantage of manual gears versus automatic? I always tell people, and tell me if this is wrong, that you need to use manual gears to be as quick as possible. Firstly, is that right? And if so, why is it right that you should use manual gears?
For me personally, I always prefer, like if I drive a car, that I'm in control of everything. So what kind of gearbox you're using also belongs to that criteria, because there's certain few corners where you will like to use more rotation, and you can only achieve that by maybe even downshifting one gear lower than that, so that the rear tires will even stop, rotating a little bit, so that the rear can rotate or like slide even more.
And that wouldn't happen if you're in automatic, because the game would not do that for you, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because normally, like with the Red Bull, for example, this is the perfect example, you would always try to abuse the downshifting as much as you can, so that once you approach the corner, you would downshift as much as you can, and once you're in the middle of the corner, you would try to upshift a lot already, so that you would have the rear tire stabilized once again, and also good traction for the exit there. So the Red Bull is probably one of the best cars where if you want to be good with it, you have to use manual gearbox.
But you could say that across the piece. So generally, manual would be the way forward.
The other good example here is if there's a race where you have to save fuel. With the automatic gearbox, it would always be at the rev limiter.
Yeah.
And obviously you can use the fuel map, but sometimes it's also more convenient to use like a higher gear already before, like by upshifting earlier, so that you can still use the fuel map 1, for example. And this way you can also save the fuel a lot better, in my opinion, because this way you can also play around with the fuel map if needed. And this is something you cannot really do by using the automatic gearbox.
And saving fuel will save you time in the pit stop.
Exactly.
And so you can jump people in the pit stop. Okay, interesting. I think it's an important point to note.
And the third one, sorry, because
this is good stuff. You keep going, my friend. You keep going.
And there are certain cars in the game where you have to shift up even earlier in order to reach the peak power and torque.
So what would be an example of one of those? I'm thinking maybe like the McLaren in Group 4, or the Bugatti Veyron is another one.
There's also the I think the M4 Group 4 is like the one of those cars which exposes that issue, not issue, but the difference between manual and automatic gearbox a lot. Because if you're using the bumper cam, you have like the little bar at the bottom, right? And the upshift point of that car is like even before it starts to blink.
So
like
before the red even appears.
And I remember like I was doing a daily race with the Group 4 cars at Road Atlanta before, and one of the other drivers in that lobby was Elias, if you know him, the German driver. He was
very
also
quick.
He was also using the M4. Like while I was starting the race from the middle of the grid, or like from the back of the grid with the M4, I was able to make a lot of places and even pass him, even though he was starting the race from pole position. And then after the race, he was like, okay, I didn't know you have to shift up the M4 that early, because he was losing a lot of time on the straight line alone. So these are like few examples why it's really, really better to use the manual gearbox instead of the automatic one.
Nice.
I think at the beginning, if you're still feeling uncomfortable with it, feel free to use the automatic one. But once you know how the car is behaving like at the track, you can maybe try to use and play around with the manual gearbox. It's a bit like it's something you have to get used to. But I mean, it's a bit similar with driving a car in real life, because normally if I drive a car in real life, I don't really see what kind of gear I'm already using, but I kind of hear it. So because I kind of memorize like what kind of gear you use at that kind of speed, and this is something you memorize by keep driving all the time.
Nice.
So we've gone over some of the nitty gritty, but I wanted to ask Mikhail some more general tips for how to be a better driver.
So what would your 3-step strategy be for a beginner to get to A+ on Gran Turismo?
This is not really a 3-step, but if you want to achieve the driver rating A+ in this game, and by starting from the very bottom, which is like the E rating, I believe, you already have to make sure that you have to spend a lot of time.
So practice is one of them, is it? Or just general experience?
It's just in general in terms of the amount of races you have to do in order to achieve A+. Because you cannot, let's say, buy the game today and expect to be A+ tomorrow or something like that, because you really have to spend a lot of time in this game while also doing the daily races here. But these are like few steps I also mentioned before. It's like you have to, like if you want to make sure to improve your driver rating as quickly as possible, you have to win those kind of races. And if you want to win those kind of races, it's a bit easier to start the races from pole position. So you have to do the time trial sessions before. But if you want to make sure to start the race from the front all the time, you also have to set a really good lap time. And if you want to do that, it's better to spend a little bit of time in the time trial session first to get used to the track, getting used to the car. And if you feel like you set a really good lap time as a banker, then you can do some daily races in order to grind DR. But this is something you're not really able to achieve within the week even, but you have to spend a lot of time.
So quali is one of the main things.
Yes, one of the main things.
Okay, nice. And then last one. So give us one secret that most people don't know about being quick on Gran Turismo. I know you can't give them all away. Just one.
No. I think it's really individual in that way, where let's say everybody has like a different potential. So for example, in my case, I entered the whole sim racing scene accidentally. Like it was not even planned that I wanted to do this in first place, because I was also playing with a gamepad casually. But there was like the one time trial event back in GT6, which I did for fun, but realized that I was, for some reason, really good at it. So I finished at P5, and it's a long story. After that, I managed to end up driving for Team Redline. And from that point onwards, I really had to make sure to drive competitively. So that meant I had to buy a steering wheel, because I thought you would be able to extract even more performance by using a steering wheel in the end. And from there onwards, I really had to make sure to drive competitively to even stay inside of Team Redline. But even when I was using the steering wheel as well as driving competitively for the first time, my pace was also like around 2.5 seconds off the pace. But most of the people would maybe give up when they see that. But in my case, I was really determined to make sure to keep driving, to keep improving on myself. But you also have to make sure to have few people within the community sometimes, or you can also join few open lobbies in GT7, where you can also try to interact with some of the other fast drivers, so that you can also learn from them. Because it's really valuable to learn from them a lot, because this way you can not only have like a linear learning curve, but like an exponential learning curve.
Because you're taking people's strengths from all these different drivers and attacking your weaknesses? Is that how you would say?
Not that, it's just you're seeing the driving in a different way. Because for example, if I'm always driving by myself, you would only think, okay, this has to be the fastest way. But maybe the other driver exposes you by thinking, no, you have to use a different line, for example, or you have to use a different gearing for the corner, or like a different rotation, like those kind of things. And this is only something you can see by interacting and by driving with those people. And I mean, you can maybe say this is easy, but I wish more people would use that as a chance to improve themselves even. So, I mean, obviously not everybody has the ambition and the goal to become one of the best drivers, but if they have, then these are like few things you should really take into consideration. Because in my case, I also never thought that I would end up as one of the world champions.
Yeah.
No, wait, sorry, it was a bit too much, but competing here first, but let alone ending up as a world champion.
Yeah.
So obviously, I mentioned that before as well, like everybody has a different potential, but I still would like to believe that if you put a lot of time into it, by also being determined, not giving up, and also keeping up the motivation, that you can also become a really, really decent driver in the end. So yeah, I wish all of those guys who have those ambitions all the best, obviously.
Fascinating, mate. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
So those were some absolutely killer tips from Mikhail Hazal there. I hope they helped you as much as they did me. For more tips to help you get to A+, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and then go watch this video here that I did on that exact subject myself.